Hi, my name's Cornell. Hi. Thank you for asking me to share. I haven't led an Alanon meeting in a very, 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 very long time. So I called my sponsor on the way here, and we had a little download because I just got into a fight with my new wife this morning, and been married for 4 weeks. And by the grace of God, by the application of the 12 steps of my life, and by the principles embodied in those applications, I'm able to recognize that I need a lot of meetings now that I'm married. You know, I'm able to recognize and because in the past, if I had gotten to an argument with a woman that I was involved with, tangentially in my imagination or my fantasy in any way imaginable, I would have not been able to show up. I would have canceled. I would have been, I'm too upset, can't come here, can't talk, gotta resolve this first before I can be here, gotta make sure she's okay so I'm okay, gotta make sure she's not mad at me so I don't think I'm gonna be abandoned and exiled and rejected and excluded and not welcomed back home. The dilemma of the alcoholic child, right? And so we got into an argument. She was supposed to be here today. She's not here today, and that's okay, right? I'll go home and I'll love on her, and we'll process. We'll talk through things, and it will be all right. Today I know it will be all right. Today I know that if I got home and she said, "My bags are packed. I'm ready to go," I'd be okay, right? Today I know that. 11 years ago, my 11th year in recovery, when I got into program, if I had gone home, somebody packed their bags and said, "I'm gone," I would have tried to kill myself, right? I'm not being dramatic, right? Alcoholism had a deep impact on my life. I grew up in a violent alcoholic home. Father who tried to kill my mother a couple times, beat the hell out of me. I was sexually abused. Grew up in a lot of violence and chaos and destruction. We moved about 12 times. A lot of warped situations, a lot of crossing of boundaries, a lot of enmeshment, a lot of blame and shame and guilt and abuse and neglect. And that marked me deeply. And that marked me very, very deeply. And it taught me that I had to earn and prove and seek validation, praise, and approval mercilessly, right? I had to always prove that I was good enough to be given the love that I thought that I didn't know that it was supposed to be given to me unconditionally, and that I thought I had to always earn. So what I learned about in these rooms of ACA, or these ACA kind of focused rooms, is that in the alcoholic home, there were deep injuries that took place to me, deep injuries around my dependency needs as a little boy, right? Wasn't held enough, you know, wasn't mirrored enough, you know, wasn't given enough safety to allow the natural unfolding of my expression, my creativity, my joy, my happiness, my sense of play in space. Right? That wasn't there, so everything became very, very contained, very constrained, very isolated, very, very narrowed in my life, and the focus became dominated upon the people who injured me the most. Right? So I developed that pattern in my life that stayed with me for the rest of my life. Right? The people who hurt me the most are the people who I am fixated on the most. Right? I don't learn to run away from those people. I learn to run to them. I learn to grab their leg and say, "Love me, love me, love me, love me, love me, love me, love me, don't leave me, don't leave me." And then my heart is ripping apart. My mind is shattering and the world's falling apart. And I don't know how to cope, and I can't go to work. And I lose my job, and I lose my apartment, and I get institutionalized, and I try to kill myself, and I get back into the institution, and they tell me I'm crazy, and I tell them they're crazy, and they feed me lots of medication. They put me on Depakote and Paxil and lithium. They tell me I have bipolar disorder. They tell me there's something seriously wrong with me. They tell me if I don't take these drugs, I'm gonna die. So I stop taking those drugs and I live. And I say, "Fuck you." Right? This is what happens to an alcoholic not an alcoholic like me, a child of an alcoholic like me. Because although I am not an alcoholic, I say I have alcoholism, right? Because I got that living mind power disease, right? Got a mind, right, that speaks with great authority and tells me things about myself and the day that I'm in, based upon the conditions that I was experienced as a child. And so it's important for me to recognize that my journey through recovery has been powerful, right? But it's also been supplemented. So I've worked the 12 steps in different programs, right? I've applied those principles in my life. I've done many fourth steps. I do 10th steps, right? I've admitted my faults. I've asked God to remove them. Some of them have been removed. Some of them are continuing to be removed. And certainly the crucible of marriage is making very clear what else needs to be taken away. Because I'm not as democratic as I thought I was. and that's good for me to see, because a guy like me who can talk to me the way I talk to me can convince me of a lot of great things about myself. And it's important for me to see in the mirror of another human being whose intimacy, vulnerability, and beingness I cannot deny on a daily basis. 51 years old, never been married, never lived with a woman, have a dog. Dog is cool. Dog don't talk back. But being in this situation is highlighting to me, oh, Cornell, you got a lot of growing up to do still. Got a lot of learning to do. You have a lot of deepening of your own understanding of intimacy and vulnerability and acceptance to do. But the wonderful thing about that is that if I hadn't been here for the nearly 11 years that I've been here, if I hadn't done the therapy that I've done, right? I did therapy. I've done trauma therapy, like specific trauma therapy. Therapy that's rooted in the body, not cognitive. Right? Therapy that addresses the violent injuries that I sustained. That really supercharged my recovery, because the 12 steps were good for me to a degree, but wonky things were still happening inside relationships and inside my life. And so when I began to treat the trauma of growing up in an alcoholic home, I began to see the depth to which those injuries still lived inside of me, and I began to see the ages of those parts of me that remained injured and trapped in the past. And so until I was able to have someone who could talk to me intimately at that level, when I first met my therapist, I was like, oh, she's not smart enough for me. She's not smart enough for me. We can't talk about Marx. Right? But what I realized is that she was a genius in talking to a 5-year-old. Right? And she talked to my 5-year-old, and to my 4-year-old, and to my 3-year-old, and to my 7-year-old, to these parts of me that were hidden and shaken and bombed out and trapped in enormous terror, right? And as I began to dialogue with these parts of me that had been injured, those parts of me that having had my dependency needs met as a child would have felt safe, would have felt capable in the world, would not have crumpled when somebody looked at me askance, would not have tried to commit suicide as an act of survival, oddly enough, suicide. 2 minutes left, is that it? Yeah. Good. So I stand here, or I sit here today, knowing how powerful this program of recovery is, knowing that there is a joy and a freedom when I release other people from expectations, and I keep the focus on myself, and I know and I embody and I take deeply seriously the spiritual axiom of the 12-step program of recovery, that whenever I'm disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with me, and I keep that focus on myself. And I do it now with a God that's in my life, a very powerful, 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 powerful God. I know today that I couldn't have known back then that no human being is here to meet my deepest needs. No human being is capable of meeting my deepest needs. No human being is responsible for meeting my deepest needs. When my dependency needs were injured in childhood, I got fixated on the external world as the source of meeting those dependency needs. And it just sent me on a quest in life in a way that would cause wreckage and chaos and despair and dysfunction and collapse in many areas in almost every department of my existence, until I began to understand that it's me and God, me and God, me and God on a daily basis. It's me and God, going to that source over and over and over and over again throughout the day. Thy will be done, not mine. Show me what you want me to do. Show me how you would be. Give me your mind. Let me see how you would see this situation. I cannot love to the depth that's required to love, to face the reality of another human being, unless I have a greater source of love that's filling me on a daily basis. And for me, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Not a result. That's not what it says in the words. It says the result. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, I will never look to people, places, things, situations, money, property, or prestige as the source of my worth or value or belonging or acceptance or self-understanding or self-identity. That confusion was planted in the alcoholic home. These 12 steps can bring me out of the past and bring me into reality so that I have a whole new basis upon which to understand myself, other people, and my place in the world. So thank you very much for letting me share. I like that reading. And, what I hear in it, when I identify with it, is a lot of pain, trauma, pain, dysfunction, chaos, and the character that got developed to adapt to the insanity of the alcoholic home. And then that character went out into the world and got into conflict with the world. And those adaptations, those solutions, and those skills that worked in the alcoholic home didn't work in the world. And that brought me to my knees. And the beautiful thing about recovery at this point in my life is that I've reached a place in it where I'm aware of several things. I'm aware that the deeper I went into recovery, that I could get fooled into thinking all that needed to come up had already come up. And in my 9th year of recovery, I hit a bottom like I've never hit in my life. And I almost didn't survive. And I started using drugs. Things went terribly wrong. So much pain came up that I didn't know if I could bear it any longer. But the beautiful thing is I kept coming to the rooms and I kept revealing it and exposing it. And what I learned is that had that stuff come up the first year of recovery, I wouldn't have survived, right? But recovery made enough space inside of me to help me, even if I moved through that experience with a lot of difficulty and with a lot of causing self-harm, I was still able to move through it and survive it. So I've learned to not be surprised if, I heard a saying in these rooms that sometimes we go deep into recovery and then we step on a grief bomb, that we didn't know was planted underneath us. And that's what happened to me. But it's only because so much excavation had already been done. And that my capacity to tolerate that allowed me to move through it and survive it. And to be therefore then open to a relationship with God that I never knew was possible. There was something still in there that was blocking me from truly full, entire dependence on God. I heard that as a definition of humility once. Entire dependence upon God. And that's what I try to practice on a daily basis. That's restoring me to sanity. That's restoring me to my sense of who I am. That's restoring me to my sense of human beingness, not other people or anything outside. It is being reflected, having my image of myself reflected back to me through a God that's unconditionally loving, accepting, and the source for me of any calm and peace that I have in my life today. So thank you for letting me share.